Thanks, Wendy. I'm not sure who's going to be taking us through on the next item.
Thank you, Chairperson. I will be taking you through the next part of the presentation, which speaks to provincial government allocations. Okay, thank you, Chairperson. So in terms of provincial transfers for 2024, transfers to provinces through the equitable share as well as the conditional grants account for 97% of transfers. The remaining 3% is made up of provincial owned revenue collections, where provinces collect revenue from motor vehicle license fees, gambling taxes, health patient fees, etc. So the provincial equitable share is expected to grow by 3.9%, while conditional grant allocations will grow by 3.7%. While fiscal consolidation cuts have been made, provinces will also receive additional revenue, and this will be through the provincial equitable share. And this is mainly to ease the pressure on provincial budgets following the implementation of the wage agreement in 2023-24. The additions are mainly to respond to health and education with wage pressures. In terms of the technical updates that have been made to the provincial equitable share, so I'll start with data availability. So some of the components are still updated using the data that was used at the time of the 2023 MTEF. The 2022 census data is still being released in batches, and some of the data that was needed when the provincial equitable share was being run was not yet available. It was also not disaggregated to the level that was needed to update the provincial equitable share. So the only data available at the time was the 2022 mid-year population estimates, and this was subsequently used to update the provincial equitable share for the 2024 MTEF. So while National Treasury understands this importance, we will be consulting Stats SA this upcoming financial year for us to determine the best course possible so that we can use the latest available data to update the provincial equitable share. So when we look at the economic activity component, it's still using the data from 2023 MTEF, and this is a regional GDP data from 2019. Stats SA is currently in the process of reviewing the methodology that is being used that informs regional GDP. So for the 2024 MTEF, the provincial equitable share has been updated as far as possible. So the updates to the health component are being implemented in a phased-in approach. There is a need for the provision of healthcare, and this is weighted according to age, the cost associated with delivering healthcare in areas of low population density, as well as the burden of disease that is faced by each province. The formula will also account for poverty, and it takes into consideration people whose household income falls into the lowest 40% of all household incomes. And then in terms of changes to the provincial equitable share, again, to respond to fiscal pressures, fiscal consolidation cuts have been implemented, and they amount to 19.6 billion in 24-25, and this increases to 20.6 billion in 25-26, and then 21.3 billion has been cut in 2026-27. However, the reductions have been offset to a certain extent by additions as well as reprioritization. So in terms of additional funds were added to the provincial transfers as announced at the time of the 2023 medium-term budget policy statement. The 2023 medium-term budget policy statement announced that a total of 68.2 billion would be allocated to provinces over the 2023 medium-term budget to the policy statement. Health sectors, and the 2020 help the sectors carry through the cost of implementing the 2023 public service wage agreement. So of this 68.2 billion, 3.9 billion has been redirected to provincial conditional grants in those two sectors to fund the compensation pressures. And then the remainder is allocated through the provincial equitable share. And a further 37.3 billion has been added to the provincial equitable share over the MTEF, and this is to continue to support provinces and to ease the cost pressures associated with the implementation of the wage agreement. In terms of changes to conditional grants, as I've previously indicated, fiscal consolidation cuts have been made, and conditional grants subsequently have been reduced by 26.8 billion over the MTEF. In terms of reprioritization, an amount of 1.1 billion has been shifted from the subsidy component of the Early Childhood Development Grant. And this money has been shifted to the vote of the National Department of Basic Education. So the shift does not affect the allocations of the provinces as the money was not allocated in the previous MTEF. The National Department of Basic Education will implement the Nutrition Support Program and result-based service delivery model. A further 737 million is shifted from the National Health Insurance Grant to the National Tertiary Services Grant. And this is to streamline funding and under one conditional grant. This is funding for oncology services. And then the personal services component and the non-personal services component have been merged to form a new health systems component. And this is under the National Health Insurance Indirect Grant. And then in terms of additions, through the Budget Facility for Infrastructure, the Western Cape Rapid Schools Program has received provisional funding. Funds will only flow once the Western Cape Education Department has met all the conditions for funding, and it is expected that funds will flow around the time of the 2024 adjusted budget. This next slide just gives a brief picture or a snapshot of all the fiscal consolidation cuts as well as the additions that have been made to provincial budgets over the MTEF. So the net effect is that 19.3 billion over the MTEF has been added once you take into consideration the additions that have been made as well as the reductions. So it's made up of 40 billion in terms of the provincial equitable share, and that's less 20 billion in terms of conditional grants cuts. And then when we zoom into the allocations that have been made to KZN over the MTEF, so for 24-25, about 146.5 billion will be transferred in the form of equitable share as well as conditional grants. So basic education as well as health conditional grants account for the highest portion of this allocation. So education is expected to receive almost 5 billion in terms of conditional grants, and then health will receive 11.9 billion in terms of conditional grants. And for education, it's expected to increase to 5.4 billion by 26-27 and to 12.5 billion for health by 26-27. And then the next slide also just shows the different departments and the different conditional grants as well as how they'll grow for the MTEF. So human settlements, for example, will receive 3.1 billion in 24-25, and this will slightly decelerate to 2.8% to 2.8 billion in 26-27, while transport will also receive 4.6 billion, and this will also reduce to about 4 billion in 26-27. Thank you, Chairperson. I will hand over to Akanyang to present the local government allocations.
Thank you. She can proceed.
Thanks so much, Chairperson. Thanks, Robbie. Next slide. Okay, so honorable members, this slide talks to the local government transfers across the 2024 MTEF. So in terms of the local government sphere, as we know, it accounts for 9.8% of the national revenue raised. And this is because municipalities have revenue raising powers. And as Wendy said earlier, local government accounts for more than a quarter of the total revenue raised by the three spheres. And then secondly is the overall direct allocations to municipalities, which shows an average annual growth of 5.2% over the MTEF. And as you can see on the table on the right-hand side, we have all the values, the adjusted budget, and then the 2 outer years there. And then in terms of the local government equitable share, the annual growth is averaging at 6.1% over the MTEF. And the local government equitable share has been adjusted up from 95.2 billion, as you can see on the table. And then this is in the 2023 financial year. And then it has increased to 110.7 billion in the 26-27 financial year. And then when you look at the general fuel levy, it has an allocation of 15.4 billion in the 23 2023 financial year, and 16.1 billion going up to 17.6 billion in 2026 financial year. And then lastly, the conditional grants, which includes direct and indirect infrastructure and capacity grants, have an allocation of 52.9 billion and 7.1 billion in the 2024 financial year. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide talks to the updates of the equitable share formula, and this is across all the 257 municipalities. And this includes updates mainly to the bulk water, which is at 10.8%. And this is for the water board bulk price increases. And then secondly is the changes, which is at 12.7%, which is an average of the multi-year price determination. And then lastly, it's the CPI, or the cross price index. This is to account for other costs. And then it's important for honorable members here to note that the formula is fully funded to account for the household growth, with an estimated amount of 11.2 million for poor households. And then further, 1.1 billion has been allocated in the 2024-25 financial year to subsidize for the remuneration of councillors. And then on the right-hand side, we have the free basic services of an amount of 76.1 billion. And then the institutional part is 6.9 billion. This is for administrative costs. And then, of course, we have the community services, which contribute a total of 10.4 billion. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide basically talks to changes done across local government allocations, with the first being the reversal of reductions and the reductions that have been adjusted downwards. So the first is the reversal of the 5.1 billion, which was previously proposed to be reduced, and this is for the general fuel levy. And then the second is the reductions against the INEP, the disaster response, and the MSIG grants, which have been revised downwards. And then secondly, there are further reductions that are made in order to make funds available for other government priorities. And this is against the INEP ESCOM grant with an amount of 3.5 billion, and the RBIG grant with a reduction of 852 million. And then the third change is that the convergence of MIG from the direct to the indirect component with an amount of 58 million. And again, with the RBIG grant from direct to indirect with 587 million. And then another adjustment is in terms of the reprioritizations and additions. This is for an amount of 1.5 billion, which has been shifted for the municipal disaster recovery grant. And this is to fund for the repairs and recovery of damaged infrastructure. And then a further amount of 2 billion is shifted to fund against the baseline for the new smart meters grant. And then lastly, it's an additional allocation that is added against the NDPG grant. And this is mainly to fund for the public employment program for cities. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are more changes to the municipal allocations. And this is with the introduction of the smart meters grant in the 2024-25 financial year. And this grant will mainly focus on the municipalities that are currently under the debt relief program. And it's mainly to assist with the timely and accurate billing for those municipalities, as well as the reduction of losses, the overall management of electricity or water through improved systems, and lastly, for the sustainable electricity or water operations in trading services. And then a further change is on the urban trading service. This is for water, electricity, and solid waste. There's been a reform on this, and the reform will talk to the decline in trading services in cities. And this is the failing service delivery, which undermines our economic growth. And so National Treasury is working with key sectors to facilitate with an institutional reform and investment in turning around urban trading services. And the implementation should start in the 2024 financial year with cities, and thereafter the grant will be effective from 2025-26 financial year. And then lastly, in terms of changes is the enhancing the usage of regulatory frameworks in the conditional grant system. And this will be with the use of results from the Department of Water and Sanitation's WASH reports, and this will be in prioritization of water and sanitation projects that are funded from the USDG, IUDG, and MIG. And this is in order to achieve with the enhancement rather of the frameworks, and the municipalities are required to ensure that the results of the green drop, blue drop, and no drop assessments are considered during planning of the projects, which is in line with the 3 grants that I mentioned. Next slide, please. Okay, so this slide shows the equitable share allocation of KZN municipalities over the 2024 MTEF and upward adjustments in the 2 outer years. Next slide. It's a continuation of the last slide. Next slide, please. So overall, KZN municipalities are allocated a total of 19.7 billion in equitable share allocations in the 2024-25 financial year, 20.5 billion in the 2025-26, and 21.2 billion for the 26-27 financial year. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the total conditional grant allocations in the province, of which for the infrastructure transfers, we have the 10 billion in the 2024-25 financial year, and this consists of direct conditional grants, which amounts to 9.4 billion, and with the largest allocation being the municipal infrastructure grant with 3.6 billion, and the indirect transfers with an amount of 663 million in the 2024 financial year. And lastly is the capacity building conditional grants, which make up a total of 356.1 billion. So the total for the province is 10.4 billion in the 2024 financial year, going up to 11.6 billion in the 2026-27 financial year. Next slide, please. So on this slide, we have here the conditional grant expenditure for KZN municipalities, and this is over a period of 3 years. And this information is in terms of Section 71 publication. So here we have the total allocation, the outcome or the total transferred, and as well as expenditure incurred against each conditional grant. So I will just look at the bottom line. So for the 2021, we have an overall expenditure of 80.6%. I can't really see, but I hope I'm saying it right. And then for the next year, it's the 2021-22. We have an improved performance of 87.3%. And finally, in the 2022-23, the expenditure has declined to 69.5%. Next slide, please. Okay, that's all from my side, honorable members. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm sure, is that all on the report that we were expecting today? Is there anything more, Wendy?
No, thank you. This is everything from our side. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Honorable members, here is the report for us to engage and discuss. Can I then have hand for members who want to engage on the report? Mine will be just few. I would say maybe you must understand this is going to be from the layman understanding of the report, because also another advantage is members did receive this report. Maybe I think it was was it yesterday or day before yesterday. So I think there will be a bit of understanding of the report. One, on the issue of data updates, that I believe I saw it somewhere where it says it has not been updated. We're still waiting for State SA to give us the updated one. Aren't this going to affect provincial and local government budgets if we are still going to utilize the 2022-2023 data? And then number two, that will be on the report two. On the report one, on the municipal spending, especially on the issues of human settlement, I saw it somewhere there. I remember us as KZN where we took a decision where when municipalities, they don't spend the money on human settlement, there was a decision that says province must take over those projects, so then that funds can be spent. Is that correct? Or maybe is it against the new amendment? I'm not sure. And then the next one will be, I think the issue of smart meters and the funding. This will also require a lot of monitoring, because it will assist a great deal, because most municipalities who have financial challenges, there's a huge loss of water in terms of leaks. If you go to any municipalities, it's a huge loss. It's between 30 to 40% loss on leaks. So I think if this is monitored properly, I think it will assist the municipalities quite a lot. And then lastly, we just have to agree that the climate change is now here with us, especially on the issue of the 100 days turnaround on storm damage programs. I mean, is there any possibility, because I believe now the 100 days was done, before we see what we see on the weather of late on the issues of climate change, is there any way we can reduce this 100? Because for me, 100 is going to be too much, because especially when you look at the issues of, with us and KZN, the issue of Margate, there is, I think it was somewhere last year or 2022, where they had almost similar storm damage. They're now back to square one. So I just wanted to check, is there any possibility of reducing the 100 days, maybe to 30 days? Thank you. Honorable members, please raise your hand, or if I can't see you, please do talk. Let's engage the report. I saw Honorable Max.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I've got one matter that I want to raise now, but I would like to come back. It's on the issue of the additional funds towards the wage agreements. Now, with both education and health, Chair, you are fully aware of this. They complain that they are terribly underfunded. And the wage agreement, I know in education, the compensation of employees bill is around 88% of its budget. And they say that's still not enough. This additional allocation, can Treasury tell us, National Treasury, with this allocation, what would be the deficit, or would it allow these two departments to completely cover the cost of the funding the wage agreement, or would there still be a deficit? Because in both these departments, there is massive shortage of funds. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Governor. Any other honorable member? There seems to be no one else. But if someone else wants to come in, I will allow them to come, and I will give it back to Wendy and the team. And also, Carol, if you want to add on anything, please do highlight. I will also allow you with your team as well. Thank you.
Yep, that will really very much be appreciated, particularly with regard to the last question by Honourable Governor. Can I please ask Akinang and Gobo Wong to come in first, and I'll add. Thanks.
Yeah. Can I then allow Carol first, then you guys will come in. Carol, please do come in. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Chair and Honourable Members. Thank you to National Treasury for the presentation. We had processed it at a technical level, and obviously, as you would know, we had tabled the provincial budget. I think just on some of the issues that have been raised by the members, in particular, the last question, the answer is no, it's not going to be adequate to cover the COE. The allocation that's been provided is purely to cover for the wage bill increase in 2023. It does not deal with the issue of unfunded filled posts where we have warm bodies and we don't have COE. That is both for education, health, and social development. So we're still going to have the same challenges, unfortunately, that we had last year. In fact, there are going to be even additional challenges. We had meetings with both health and education on Monday where certain posts have been filled and there are challenges with there not being funding for those. You know, the issues around the doctors that have been that have qualified and now can't be absorbed into the system. We're also going to be having nurses having the same challenge. So even with the Department of Education, we're not meeting the minimum norms and standards. And National Treasury is aware of all of this through their benchmarking exercise that they undertook. I think just on the smart meters, this is a national program and National will be driving that. And we are very hopeful that it will assist our municipalities in raising the necessary revenue that is required. But I think just a general comment is, in so much as there are additional funds coming to the province, and we understand the need for consolidation of the cuts in the P and the equitable share, it really is hurting this province. We ended the last financial year, we're still waiting for the final numbers, but our accruals are sitting between about 6 and 7 billion rand that will be carried into the next financial year, that will be carrying another 4.5 billion rand budget cuts. So we are facing a very challenging year going ahead, and we really will implore, as we always do, to National Treasury to look kindly at KZN being a largely rural populated area and having the needs, and especially with the chairperson who's raised around consistently being hammered by disasters impacting on our ability to respond immediately to those communities in need. I think, let me stop. Just on the housing, Honourable Chair, my understanding, and I'm sure Wendy can add here as well, is that where it is funding that has come directly from human settlement to the municipality, they certainly could, based on the lack of performance, reverse those decisions, and obviously within the grant funding arrangements, that would be a condition. But where it's funding that's going directly to the municipalities, that could, I stand to be corrected, but I think that would be a challenge then for the province to step in, because the funds have not flowed through province. But let me hand over then to Wendy and her team. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Carol. Wendy, you can proceed with the team.
Can we go Gobo Wong first and then Akanyang, and I will then go last. Thanks. Akanyang, nothing from your side?
Thanks, Wendy. I think I heard the honourable member mentioning with regards to smart meters. I don't know if it was a question or a comment, but just to give you some sort of relief, the grant will be administered by the National Treasury, and this is the same team that is also responsible for the debt relief program, and they have the relevant experience. So with regards to the monitoring of water losses issues, they should have the experience to do that, because they also have the relevant experience, of course, with the management of municipal finances. Thanks.
Thanks, Gogo Wong.
Thank you, Wendy. Apologies, honorable members. I was muted. I was talking to myself. I didn't realize that. I will respond to the question related to the data, the census data updates. So the report was released in October 2023. However, it was released too late into the budget process to allow for sufficient time to do the data analysis and to adequately access what the implications will be for the 2024 MTEF. So the data that was released also was not at the level that is required as inputs into the provincial equitable share. Hence, a decision was taken by the TCF, the Technical Budget Forum, as well as the Budget Council, not to update the provincial equitable share, I think, as well as the local government equitable share for the 2024 MTEF in order to minimize any disruptions that could occur to provincial and local government allocations. So as I've indicated as well that we do understand the importance of using the latest census data, and as such, we will be consulting with Stats SA for the upcoming financial year in order to determine the best course of action. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I maybe just add to the last response? Because what happened is that Stats SA will release data in batches. So what they've released so far is just the information of population, the population per province and the population per municipality. But to give a specific example, let me start with the local government equitable share side. The largest part of the formula indicates that it's the number of poor households that's got access, that should receive free basic services. So it's not all households that receive free basic services. The local government equitable share is just targeted at poor households. So we've got the population numbers in the municipalities, but we don't have the poverty data. So those two, parts of the data is integrally linked. So we cannot use it in the local government equitable share because we do not have the poverty data. We're currently in discussions with Stats SA, and we're still waiting for them to come back to us on when their data is going to be released. And it's most probably going to be one of the last batches, because to determine the poverty data is actually one of the most complicated exercises. So hopefully we'll be in time for the 2025 MTF. Then the same applies to the provincial equitable share. If we just looked at population, it wouldn't be a problem. But if you look at all the factors that need to be updated, then we can only update 50% of the formula, so the other 50% cannot be updated. And particularly in the health component, it is a challenge similar to what I explained on the local government side. The data is linked. So you can't update the one component without the other. You will do more damage than good, actually. Because if you look at the provincial side as well, you look at, and the formula is designed in such a way that, particularly in health and education, you look at the number of people accessing public facilities. So you're not interested solely in the number of children that's going to school, for example. You're interested more in the number of children within a certain age bracket that goes to public schools. And the other component is just a correction factor to ensure that the data that we receive is correct. On the health side, the same applies. You're interested in people accessing public health facilities and not accessing health facilities as a whole, because then you will be counting everyone that's also receiving services through medical aids, for example, which would distort the formula. I know I'm giving lots of information, but I think it's important that this information be shared. And then what is important, there are a number of provinces, and KZN is included, Eastern Cape is included, where if you look at the mid-year population estimates, that the growth rate was slightly underestimated. So the census data do show a positive, higher growth rate than the mid-year population estimates. But hopefully, again, like I said, on the local government side, we'll have the information ready for next year. What will then happen if there was the data was underestimated? It will mean that the KZN provincial equitable share will be increased. But basically, and we took it through all the technical structures, the various options were put forward to the technical group, and it was endorsed by the political structures as well, that we have no option but to use old data until we've got the full set of census data that's required both for the provincial equitable share and the local government equitable share. Then, with regard to municipal spending, if it's a provincial allocation and it's going through it's like the HOD of KZN Provincial Treasury pointed out, if it's a provincial allocation or it's going through the Urban Settlements Development Grant, then the allocation, even if it was indicated that it will go to the municipality, the province can do that reversal. So the change in the clause has got no impact on that. It is just to make it transparent what allocations will go to the municipalities concerned. It doesn't mean that there's no scope for the province to change those allocations, and it is just now applicable on 2 grants. Then with regard to the 100 days, it is the time in terms of which a province or a municipality that's been hit by disaster can access immediate disaster relief funding. It's not a legislative requirement that comes from the Division of Revenue Act. It is actually a requirement that comes from the National Disaster Management Centre. And the issue is that the province or the municipality undertakes all the paperwork. And one of the concerns we currently have is that both provinces and municipalities really struggle to do the compliance work in time. So if you shorten it, it will mean that instead of having 100 days to access immediate disaster relief funding, they will now only have 30 days. And that means all the verification work, etc., needs to be done sooner. It doesn't mean that you must wait up to 100 days. So if you can do everything within 30 days, then the submission will be sooner available to the National Disaster Management Centre to process. So it doesn't mean that you can't do it in a shorter period. So the 100 days is actually there is not the maximum. It's the minimum. It's the maximum. Then with regard to smart meters. Yes, one of the issues that's going to be dealt with, keep in mind that we're starting with electricity, but over time it's actually meant to be extended also to other services. And if you look at the changes made to the Urban Settlements Development Grant that goes to metros, one of the changes there is to fix the water business, which will, amongst others, mean to deal with the leaks as well. Then with regard to the question by Honourable Governor, the HOD of KZN has already dealt with it. And maybe just to add to that is that, it's a very, very difficult choice. And I mean, if you look also at the newspapers, the spiraling debt that South Africa is in is really quite a big concern. And if that is not dealt with, it will mean that in the end, the only money we will have available is to pay off debt and have no money available anymore for service delivery. So the very, very difficult decision was made to curtail the growth in budgets, which have got an impact on all spheres of government. It's national, provinces, and local government. And one of the tools used was to bring in the salary bill. And the concern that is, and it's been pointed out in various committees, the concern is not necessarily the number of staff that's in the system, but more the pay levels of the staff. But if you can't control the pay levels, unfortunately, then you need to control the staff numbers. So it's really quite a difficult responsibility that's placed on provincial treasuries to basically try to target as much money as possible towards essential services, and that is health and education, and then to look where savings can also be accrued in other spaces in the provincial budgets. So it's really a very, very difficult task that's going to most probably continue for a number of years going ahead. Thanks.
Thanks, Wendy. I saw Honorable Govender.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, just a follow-up. You see, my concern, and you've raised this thing about the information from the census and the updating of information. It really is a concern that in terms of education, but I'm sure health and, I don't have the stats for health and social development, but I think the principle of the matter is the same, that the compensation of employees bill is so high. Because in education, I know because we met them in March, 88% going to compensation of employees, and then a very small percentage going to the rest of which should be the core business of the department. Because I did point out at the time that, government departments are not employment agencies as such. And we do understand the labor intensivity, but still. And that small 12%, right, already has in it accruals, huge accruals, right, unauthorized and unauthorized expenditure and other things as well. So there really isn't much for service delivery, and that's my concern. And I do think that there needs to be some kind of an audit of how funds are dispersed within the departments. That's the one thing. The second thing is, given that we have the energy crisis in our municipalities as well, where there's an issue around electricity, etc., and water provision is impacted by shortages of electricity. And I'm not only talking about load shedding, I'm just talking about electricity provision, full stop. Where is Treasury? Has Treasury considered specific funding for energy related projects, green energy, etc.? Because I think that this is the future, and this is the kind of thing that municipalities should be encouraged to engage in, so that consumers become more self-reliant. And similarly, on the issue of water, it's not just an issue of repairing infrastructure, although that is critical at the moment. It's actually the renewal of infrastructure, which costs far more. And, there has to be some kind of balance done between repairing and replacing. And in some of the municipalities, because the maintenance budget hasn't been followed, you really have a situation where there's nothing. The infrastructure is completely destroyed. So I'd like to hear what measures, I don't know, it's, maybe micromanagement or something, but I'd like to hear about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Honorable Governor. I saw earlier on a hand of our HOD, Carol. Do you still want to have a bite?
No, my apologies. It was a legacy hand. Apologies.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Thank you. Can I give it back to Wendy, please? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with regard to the electricity provision, actually, most probably the correct term to use going forward is energy provision, because it is very correct to point out that the whole electricity industry is reforming and becoming an energy sector where more technologies are actually available and should be explored. And it is already being explored by some municipalities. Like, for example, the city of Cape Town has already got wind energy in place, and they funded that through, donor funding, so there's various green energy sources that you can actually tap in to receive funding to do these type of initiatives. And coastal cities have also got potential there, evidently. So there's quite a lot of new technologies that's coming to the fore. And of course, it's always making a choice between when do you invest in these new technologies, because in the beginning they're very expensive, but as time goes past and the technologies become more stable, and there's higher demands for it, becomes much more cheaper. And to give a good example of that is solar, for example, which is now much more affordable than what it was when it originally came out. Yes, we're currently in the process of reviewing the conditional grants, and one of the areas that we're looking at is how the current electricity grants are structured, and the whole intention is going forward. We've introduced the smart meters grant as one option to deal with the current challenges, but over time, those conditional grants will also be restructured to focus more on energy than just exclusively on the conventional way that electricity is provided. So we'll keep the committee up to date with any of those developments as we go forward. So that's definitely something that we're aware of, and we are keeping track of. And maybe before I jump off that one, because I just referred to the grant changes, but particularly, and when we look at electricity or energy, we also need to look differently at poor households versus those that can afford electricity, because the solutions are very different. Where poor households are funded through the equitable share and conditional grant system. If you look at bigger customers and businesses, cities need to fund them, or municipalities need to fund them differently, because those costs can be recouped through tariffs, for example. The municipalities can access also private financing or external loans, long-term loans, to undertake these type of investments. We're also looking at from a municipal borrowing perspective, and the options available there. And one of the options available that specifically links to green energy is also green bonds. There are investors that specifically focus on that. So there are opportunities available both for the poor and the non-poor. Then with regard to the water and the issue about repairing versus replacement, that is a very, very critical point. And one of the big concerns that we've got is that municipalities really underinvest in repairs. Again, we need to separate between poor and non-poor. In terms of the non-poor, it should the maintenance component should be part of the tariff, and the municipality should use that maintenance component in the tariff to actually ensure that they undertake the maintenance and budget appropriately for maintenance. So one of the biggest concerns we do currently have is that, firstly, the municipalities, they budget currently insufficiently for maintenance. So even what they budget for is not really what is needed. But what is even worse is that what they budget for and what they spend, the percentages are very, very different. It's much lower what they actually spent, and it's not even higher or the same. So that is definitely something that municipalities should start focusing on. And if you want to repair the water business, there's a lot of benefit in investing in maintaining infrastructure. I mean, if you look at certain municipalities and they look at water leakages, in certain municipalities, there's revenues lost of over R1 billion in one municipality per annum, over R1 billion. That's how much money is forfeited because of water leaks. So if you start adding it all up together, then you can see the revenue forfeited by municipalities are quite large in this regard. So it's definitely something that we're focusing on. We've made changes to the Urban Settlements Development Grant, where we require the metros as a start, but we want to start replicating it in other conditional grants. where they're required to indicate how they're going to start running water again as water businesses along private sector principles, not like a private sector company, but along the lines of good, solid business practices. Because we do want to get the water businesses, even in the larger municipalities, to start functioning well. And we'll target other tariff setting services as well going forward. If you look at changes to the municipal infrastructure grant, conditional grant framework, there's also reference made that the green drop, the blue drop, and the no drop will be taken into account as well. So there's a number of reforms that are made to the conditional grant system to ensure that municipal services are rendered more cost effectively and more efficiently. Akanang, I don't know if you want to add anything.
I think you've covered everything, Wendy. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you. Honourable members, those are the responses that they gave us. Unless there is no other question or clarification, then we'll move on to our next item on our agenda, which will be announcements. There's only one announcement that I need to do, is that on Friday, these honourable members will have the two bills to the negotiating mandate on DORA bill and public procurement bill. It will start at 9 a.m. It will be on the 19th of April. So that will be the announcement that I want to do for members. Other than that, let's appreciate your explanations, your report, Wendy and the team, and Carol and the team, honourable members. Thank you. I think we have reached the stage where we have to, then the next item will be closure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair.
It's starting just now.
I'll check it.
No.
Thank you.